from midcourt and beyond, and Nigeria.
Thank you very much for joining us here. Now, it's time to get talking indeed. So let's get talking. I'm glad to join this conversation now. Glad it's a very fine morning to have you return after the weekend. How's the weekend meanwhile?
Fantastic, fabulous, and so good to be back.
I like the thing with the gesticulation. Fantastic, fabulous, exciting to be back. What's the thing
Probably
with
because we're looking alike today.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Maybe that'll be the rhythm today.
Yeah.
Everything comes with, oh, you know.
Yeah.
And such a day like the day I'll say, no, Bright James, don't put me on that track today.
Okay, so this we're not doing today.
No, we're not doing out. I didn't really like that.
All right, so let's begin from tennis this morning and talk about Swiatex. Yesterday when we had that news that the lady talked about Ashley Barty is retiring at just the age of 25 after winning 3 Grand Slam titles. Now, you talked about the next phase very quickly, which would be her being replaced at the #1 rankings. And there were 2 ladies in the running, Paolo Badosa and, of course, Swiatex from Poland. And it had to be Swiatex the closest. And she did that over the weekend at the age of 20. She's now become the new world #1, ending Ashley Barty's 114-week stay at the top of the WTA rankings.
It's big for Swiatex, Bright James. Big for Swiatex at 20. You know, it seemed like one fairy tale story to another.
Absolutely.
You have one at 25, Ashley Barty, who's the world #1 at the time at 25, and then she decides to retire. And there's a 20-year-old waiting for her. Just seemed like she was waiting for that moment.
Yeah.
Got a fine year, hitting 13 consecutive wins for her this year, and massive in 20-something wins, I think 22 or thereabout for her this year. The highest number for any female so far. Exceptional tennis player for me, Swiatex. We saw her performances moving from the Doha. We saw performances at the Doha, we saw performances at Indian Wells, we saw performances so far in Miami Open. Exceptional tennis from her right now. And she's doing quite well for herself, and playing quite well. So far, there's no better fit to be a world #1 than Swiatex. And it's been such an inspiration for her, for the younger lads who are looking up to do great things in tennis. And for, most importantly, what happens, Bright James, has been looking at most of the tennis players at this level who really think to themselves. They've been pursuing and doing a lot of effort trying to get to this level. And you get to a level, you begin to see that you can as well do it. If Swiatex can do it at 20, she's such an inspiration for many and people even in Poland.
Now let's talk about the next phase of conversation. You know, we've talked about consistency and, you know, the fact that we haven't really seen a lady take that sport and make it hard since Serena Williams, that holding that top spot for 186 consecutive weeks. Now, Swiatex, the first Polish to ascend to the WTA rankings throne at just 20. Has she got the quality and has she got the composure? And how long do you see her staying here? Or is it going to be a cameo like Daniel Medvedev?
I do not think it's going to be like Daniel Medvedev. But on the other hand, I think if you were to ask Swiatex, is she be world #1 at this stage? She might have told you no, because it seems so sudden and so fast. Sometimes it's just a run of form, one way or the other. You're playing the bit you can, doing the bit you can in tennis, and putting in a lot of efforts to get these results. And the results keep coming. And it becomes consistent. You seem to be, even with football, you seem to be the guy in form at the point. But there's a difference between that form and class. It's taking the form and being consistent with that form and developing that class. Maybe in the long run, at 20, we've seen a lot of ladies do this, perform quite well at this level, but not being able to sustain it. And we saw Ashley Barty do it at the time, and we really thought that Ashley Barty will be able to sustain it and move on. Big credit to Ashley. She's done a bit and stayed up high up there for a long time, for a while at least, being able to go all through and get all the wins and the titles she's won. But it's time for Swiatex to see how she can replicate it. I do not know if she will replicate it, but it will all boil down to that fine margin of consistency for me.
Right now, she's also looking to join an exclusive list that has the likes of Victoria Azarenka, Kim Clijsters, ladies who've won 3 consecutive Masters 1000, you know, in the past. Now she's already won Doha and Indian Wells. Can she capture the ultimate prize here in Miami?
Well, big one. I do not know if she can capture it, but if you consider the form this season, you realize that she's really the girl in form.
Yeah, 13-1 now.
she seemed like the one everyone wants to beat at the point. You want to get to that level. The picture will be the most recent world #1 to challenge.
Absolutely.
Always a difficult one because it comes with its pressure. Being world #1 is no mean feat. It seems like you are the best now and everyone is looking forward to make a name of you. And that's the situation right now. The pressure is much for her. But in terms of talent, in terms of form, in terms of capacity, I think she can go all the way and probably get a win at Miami Open. Only time will tell. And just few matches to go for her to do that. All she needs to do is to keep her focus and keep playing the way she was playing. Put in that tenacity and that energy. Who knows, before the month is over or weeks are over, we'll have a new winner for the Miami Open.
Right now, the game on your screen is Viktorija Golubic up against Iga Swiatex, now risen to the #1 rankings in the WTA. Now, the conversation continues, and of course, we'll be talking about Iga Swiatek potentially clashing with the American teenager. We're talking about Coco Gauff later today in an explosive round of 16 clash. Now, let's leave the WTA very quickly and head for the ATP, where the biggest story this morning is about this man, Nick Kyrgios, continues to stun many. Well, I remember sitting here a couple of weeks ago, Blyden, we talked about how dangerous this man will be, you know, when he enjoys playing tennis. And that was at Indian Wells when he met with Rafael Nadal. You know, he talked about the fact that he's enjoying tennis this particular season and, you know, how that feel-good factor culminating wins for him. And back-to-back now, he's taken out very strong opponents, and he's done what many thought before now would be a task impossible. And the Rublev in the exclusive clash we talked about on Friday, and beyond that, he's taken out the highly experienced Italian Fabio Fognini. Marvelous story here, Blyden.
It's wonders for me when a wild card gets wild in tournament.
Begins to run wild.
I'm telling you. So in Indian Wells,
Yeah.
came in as a wild card. For me, it means has nothing to lose.
Absolutely.
Goes in, black and blue, beating people. And you meet him, he's ready to bet you, gives you that challenge. And that has been the beauty of Nick for me this year. So far, Nick seemed like a different Nick. I think something happened to him at Australian Open. He was all exciting at Australian Open, making a name for himself. But I think people begin to look at him as the unserious Nick who just plays and have fun.
You never know. It could have been that that doubles crown. He had a taste of victory for the very first time in quite a long while.
Understood what it feels to be a
absolutely.
champion.
You know, when he paired up with his countryman Thanasi Kokinakis to win the doubles at the Aussie Open, and ever since then we've seen his form and fortune transmogrifying.
It could be because I was wondering, because I watched him at the Australian Open. Quite exciting, talking to the fans, talking to anybody wanted to talk to, playing to the glamour, talking to his girlfriend and all that. And you begin to wonder...
That could be another factor, you know.
And you begin to wonder, is he really ready for the championship? Is he ready to win the tours? Is he ready to win the Grand Slam? So at some point, the papers really talked about him on the negative, though on an exciting level also. But we got to a point where, as you mentioned, he got to win the double. And winning a champion has a way of giving you a feel of that excitement that probably you can go all the way and get to win tournaments. And it would be an honor or an exceptional perspective for him if he goes all the way and win an honor in the singles competition. But it's what it is. We've seen Nick go all the way and playing quite well and doing the best he can. Probably, who knows, he might stage an offset moving forward for me.
Right, now, that Nick Kyrgios, he set up another explosive clash with Yannick Sinner, who for a second game running had to come this time from 5 games down, serving 5 match points to progress to the next round of the competition, where he would meet Nick Kyrgios. This has got to be some clash here.
It will be a big clash for me, one way or the other. Why? Because Nick seemed like the guy who's ready. Though sometimes people don't really consider him a serious guy, but he seemed like the guy who's ready. A bit tall, got all the movement, power front hand, and power saves all together. Exceptional tennis player. We're beginning to take Nick seriously, and I think a lot of players should. But Yannick Sinner, the Italian for a while, for me, had not really seen the best of Sinner in recent times.
Yeah.
Had been a little here, had been a little there. Once in a while, he comes to the party. It seems like the next big thing we're looking for him in Italy. But in recent times, he's not really been the mainstay in terms of even the younger generations. I'm looking forward to how Yannick will be able to cope with Nick in this one. We really talked about Rublev at the time and rated Rublev so high, but Nick Kyrgios had a way of dealing with Rublev. How much more Yannick Sinner? I think I'd like to give the game to Nick Kyrgios and begin to have confidence in a guy. But it's going to be a critical game for him and Yannick Sinner. And look at that.
Look at that smash.
He could have just smashed it, but he had to jump into the air and smash it and tell everybody he's in for it.
And now that's something he wouldn't, have done last year on tour. Maybe he would just try to slice it and try to be a lot more stylish with it.
Yeah.
But that shows seriousness. This man wants it.
Well, he still brought in some style anyway.
Absolutely. Now,
You can't take that away from the man.
Yeah, let's go further and talk about your man.
Oh, who could that be?
Cameron Norrie.
Oh.
One of the most
I
informed players
dropped
on tour.
Norrie for a while, not my man anymore.
Okay, well, Norrie is
Used
now,
to be.
You know, Norrie is now at number 12, right?
I know.
Yeah, and he's aiming to break into the top 10 for the very first time
When
in
he
his
gets
career.
there, he'll be my man.
Well, over the weekend, that journey continued and saw his opponents reaching the round of 16 here. And, I listened to him talk very pointedly at the end of that particular clash. Said his ambition is to reach the top 10 before the end of July. And now look at the tours between now and then. He's got a lot of competitions to play and, of course, he's got a lot of points to gather before then. And now he's at a high career ranking, number 12. He's aiming higher. That's got to be exciting.
The younger lads are aiming higher. Name it the Alcaraz, Norrie. Norrie a little bit older than the likes of Alcaraz, but come on. It's not easy when you are a British number one. It's usually very difficult, and Cameron Norrie has been in that position. And the British media, they seem to make you feel like you are the world number one. You ought to play better, and there's always this pressure coming with it. It's been difficult for Cameron Norrie, but exciting for me at one point because when I realized that Norrie was the Indian Wells champ at the time, and he's doing his bit. Though disappointing for him at Indian Wells, he wasn't able to get the win at Indian Wells to retain his belt, or his title rather. But he did the best he can. And he's been a bit consistent. Last year was a little terrible for him because he started well. At the end of last year, didn't quite do well. At some point, he was lucky losers at different tours, but couldn't still make it. But disappointing from one hand from him. But moving this year, he's really started well and quite pushing. And just as it is said, when you dream, dreams do come true. Most likely, I think the likes of Norrie will get into the top 10, and the likes of Alcaraz and the rest, they'll get into the top 10. Only time would tell. At that age and the way they're playing, it seems the momentum is building up for them, and they're moving forward. But can he win another tour? I think it would be exciting for me to see the likes of Norrie get to do that.
Right now, very quickly, let's leave the tennis stories from the WTA now to the ATP. Let's leave there and head to the speedlands of Formula 1 in Saudi Arabia for the second race of the season. Well, the race was dominated, pre-race by the explosion in Jeddah and all of the talk and how that could potentially affect, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. But the drivers stayed very resolute, said, well, despite the off-the-track distractions, would keep our focus on the big prize and, of course, participate at the Saudi Grand Prix. And Blyden, at the end of that Saudi Grand Prix, before the season started, meanwhile, getting back to it, we were respecting a rivalry between the Red Bull driver, we're talking Max Verstappen, and Lewis Hamilton of Team Mercedes. But after two races, there's a certain rivalry. Now we'll talk about Charles Leclerc of Ferrari, and of course, the man talk about Red Bull's Max Verstappen. And the latest chapter saw Max Verstappen, despite losing the first Grand Prix to Leclerc in Bahrain, he came up stronger this time, winning with 4 laps to go, overtaking him and held on to that particular position. And on the fringes, we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton finishing in number 10.
It's been the same story we've talked about at the beginning of this particular year in Formula 1, Brad James. Remember, we talked about the different cars. We talk about the levels of these cars. We talk about the quality of cars. We talk about the speed of the cars. And the new rules are coming into place. And I remember last week you did ask me about the quality of Mercedes cars, and how they ought to perform. If we have to look at the stability that comes with Mercedes and what they ought to do regarding speed. Do they continue with that stability, stability long and steady, and gets you the win, or you go with speed? I think the dynamics is changing, and we've always known Ferrari to have fast cars, as I talked about last week. The similar the team you ever look at, if you want to look at in terms of fast cars, it ought to be Ferrari. And we're beginning to show class, even the likes of Carlos Sainz, who are also in the mix and doing well for Ferrari. It seems like a tournament that everyone is challenging Ferrari at the moment for me. But Red Bull's big side on anytime you want to look at it. Nearly said on the night, but not the night now. Anytime you want to look at it, big signing, and they know how to go about the franchise and have the business done. But right now, it's all about basically the different components of the cars and what you get. I was listening to Leclerc talk about this particular event, how he got to lose this one.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns had been the drag system, the drag reduction system that they have. And the question had been that at each turn, they were getting closer and trying to get the win, overtake Max Verstappen Red Bull. But each time they get to past the detection line, which requires, like when you are 20 seconds ahead of the next man, you have to put in the drag reduction system. And when Verstappen does that drag reduction system, it seems like he's flying ahead of them and they cannot catch up. So most often than not, it's going to boil down to the quality of cars that you have and what you bring in.
Right now, with this wheel-for-wheel battle, that's what we saw in Saudi between Ferrari's driver, we're talking, Charles Leclerc, and Red Bull's Max Verstappen. What does that leave, Team Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton?
Wow, big question. But I think it's a question they cannot answer themselves either right now because they seem confused. They were lucky in Bahrain to finish third because of the incident with fuel supply that has to do with Red Bull cars. But now the Red Bull guys are back and they're driving at the peak. It's quite difficult. For me, I think they have to look forward to what they can do with their rear wing.
Yeah.
Create certain changes, the aerodynamic speed that they can get, reduce the aerodynamic drag.
Have they got the time? Because we were talking about the race already up and running as we speak.
What we've seen most times throughout the season, you see the Mercedes sides make these adjustments happen to their teams and they come out flying. Last season we saw it. It seemed as if it was all about Verstappen. And by the time they made these adjustments on the engine, on the rear wheels and all that, we saw them flying, Hamilton flying. And it seemed like they just started late of some sort. I think it's not very late for them. There are a couple of races to take place, about 21 more races to take place. If they do something as quick as possible, I think there are going to be changes and we might see the likes of Mercedes and Hamilton flying again.
Well, if those changes are to take place, then they need to make it very quick, and how that impacts the gap which is slowly building now between the likes of Team Ferrari, Team Red Bull, their drivers Charles Leclerc, and we're talking Red Bull's Max Verstappen, and the Mercedes duo of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Well, that's something we probably have to keenly observe, and of course we're going to see how it pans out in the coming weeks. Now,